But I highly recommend faculty take advantage of this academic innovation program because it can lead to amazing outcomes. And it doesn't necessarily mean huge overhauls to your course because small changes can make a big difference. You were able to serve as an ombudsman or as a point of contact for students to come and ask questions or share feelings or concerns.
You were able to take my advice and implement it and ask your students yourself, be like, hey guys, what can I do better to make it feel more welcoming? And them give you advice. And so double advice, that can only mean one good thing. 20 points extra on the survey.
Isabella, welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about the SCP program after introducing yourself?
Hello, my name is Isabella Bartolomeo. This is my first time working in the SCP program. I've learned a lot. We accomplished our goal of getting more belonging in the online space in your online classroom. So I feel proud of us for that. And I'm excited to hopefully work with you next semester as well.
I hope they approve it. You never know what they're going to do, but the student experience project, yeah. And I had been a part of the student experience project before, and I had been doing these kinds of surveys for a while now, but this is the first time I got to work with a student who was not in the class giving advice for the class, both before the class started and while the class was going. For me, focusing on belonging in an online environment has always been super difficult. And to see your advice helped to create that plus 20 quantitative measure of belonging. You invested hours of time looking at the course that I had before we even had students in the course. What was some of the advice that you gave about improving the course?
The first thing I noticed was that I thought there was some redundancy in the modules. So it's like, maybe you could move this into this module and it'd make more sense. And some of the sentences were a little wordy. And as someone with dyslexia, I was like, this is hard to understand. Maybe you could word it a different way. But overall, I thought your modules were really well thought out and planned. And those were really the only two big problems I saw with the modules.
Well, you also recommended quotes, remember? You recommended that I put quotes. So I was like, I just spent like hours putting in quotes to each module based on your recommendation. I know that made a difference in how students perceive the course, right? Because the quotes may not seem like a big deal, but they are in an online environment.
Yeah, because you don't get that same face-to-face interaction with teachers. So you can't give them your words of wisdom in person. You have to do it on the online space. And the quotes I think really helped that. You just reminded me. I also recommended that you could add time frames to complete assignments. The projects, this is an accelerated course. It's an 8-week course, and so it's very work heavy. And I noticed that the project due date was only one date, and it's very open ended on when you could start it or when you should finish. And I thought, I'm a real procrastinator, and so if I have my teacher set dates for me, like not like due dates, just recommended dates on what I should complete and by when, it's really helpful because it's just easier to see it on your calendar, be like, do this by this, do this by this, especially with a really big project. And I think that definitely will help as well. That would help me as a student, so I hope it helps the other students in your class too.
We know for a fact that it did because we saw increases on and specific comments related to that, right? So we always have something due that week and it's always the same day, but we didn't have timing recommendations like do this part on Monday, do this part on Wednesday, do this part on Friday. And I think that really helped people, and adding that little touch, I think made a big difference because I've had it in some of my other courses, but for some reason I didn't have it in this course. And I was like, I had a blind spot that my student experience partner was able to point out. And because my student experience partner, Isabella, pointed out that blind spot, I was able to fix it and have a much better student experience, right?
Yes, I'm so happy I could do that for you. It's really hard to focus on the details when you're so busy. It's hard to focus on the tiny details, and so I'm happy that I can be that detail-oriented person for you. And it might feel small, but makes a big difference. Like the details matter.
And those small things didn't stop there. We went through the course with a fine tooth comb before it even started, and we were looking for ways to improve clarity, the timing suggestions, the quote suggestions. You mentioned specific things that your teachers had done in the past that you really liked. And while they might not have been in online classes, they absolutely could be applied to an online environment in certain ways. Can you think of some of those things that you observed teachers doing really well that could be applied to an online environment?
I think it's really hard in general. The online teachers don't get enough credit of how hard some of them work on how to make their classroom a happier environment, especially just because Zoom has already a bad rap with my generation of kids with COVID. So it's really hard. Some things that I enjoyed in a in-person classroom were just the relationship I was able to have with my teacher. And I think that is possible with an online teacher. It's just you have to work twice as hard. So I recommended to you doing the orientation videos explaining each module, like not face to face, but through a video, I think would help feel that connection with your teacher and also more office hours, like office hour topics. That's what I mean. Yes. Office hour topics and getting to know the students on a not just a student level, like a more personal level. Like, what do you do when you're not in school? That's really important. And just giving the students a little tidbit of your life, I think it really makes a difference. Like, you are a teacher to them, but you could also potentially be a mentor and you have lived experiences that maybe some haven't had. And I think all of that really matters to a student, especially a student in college that is still trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. And yeah, that's my favorite part of my teachers, being able to connect with them on a, like, a deeper level.
It's interesting. I had some feedback saying that I had too many videos and I had gone in the other direction because, in part, videos like this, these podcasts that I include in the course, and other videos that I have in the course. And I think that using and leveraging video is really important, but doing it the right way. A piece of advice that you had, which is also best practice, is making sure that the videos are shorter. So, yes, I have an introduction page and an Adobe link that has all my personal and professional experience listed as a means of introduction. But having a short video instead of a long video is important, right?
For sure, especially with short form content becoming more um, prevalent in the online space. And also, I think it could feel overwhelming for students if you just put a bunch of videos in like a list and be like, watch these. I think being mindful of where you add videos is also important, like you said, and making sure that you put why you believe that these videos are important in an easy to understand way for the students to understand where you're coming from because it's a two-way street. You need to understand why they feel like there's too many videos, and we need to understand why you're putting so many videos.
We have rationales usually for assignment. We explain why you're doing this assignment in a rationale section for an assignment, but we don't always do that for course content. We might do that at the beginning of a chapter. We might do that at the beginning of some publisher free OER learning resources. But with a video, sometimes we forget to do that. And we don't say this is why it's important to watch, or this is what you need to watch for, or here are some questions to answer to watch for. What are some other things that you noticed in the course that could be improved, that we actually improved and had good outcomes with?
Your biggest issue in the course was the feeling of belonging, which to me stumped me so hard because I was like, how do you make a student feel more belonging in an online course? I feel like that's definitely a new thought that our generation has to think now because that's so crazy that how do you even start? And that was definitely a struggle at the beginning, but obviously our suggestions worked because we got 20 points towards belonging, which I also think we should explain what that means. I don't think we explained the 20 points.
Yeah, so we have 2 surveys because it was only an 8-week class, whereas in a 16-week class, we might have 3 surveys. We had 2 possibilities for surveys in the 8-week online learning environment. And as one of the only ones in the student experience project that were doing an asynchronous 8-week course, the main challenge was creating an environment that was more welcoming. And that was the key. And this is connected to identity safety. This is connected to student experience, specifically with social connections. This is connected to some other dimensions that are elevated in a student experience project. And these aren't the only things that are important in teaching. These aren't the only things that are important online teaching. But for the student experience project, these are the particular domains that they chose to measure in specific ways. And at the beginning of the semester, you'll have things that we expect to see, like low self efficacy. Well, of course, you don't feel as confident in being able to do things when you first get to a course because one of the points of the course is that you can assimilate the skills, language, the vocabulary in order to do the things that you need to do. But there is no excuse for not making sure people feel welcome. And that's one of the things that we were able to focus on and get a 20-point bump in our survey. So part of this is celebration, part of this is breaking down and deconstructing. How did we do that? Because I know that before I was working with the student experience partner, the bumps that I saw were never that huge. And this semester, in working with you, I had a double digit 20-point jump, which I'm still struggling to understand as a result of working with a student experience partner.
I think it definitely also has to do with you being transparent with the students on what was wrong with the course and asking for help or advice on what you could do better. Because you got some great feedback, really sweet compliments on how amazing you are in the survey. And I definitely think that's because you're so open to taking in criticism from the students, which I think most teachers are hesitant to do because what they've done is worked for them for a long time, but there's always room for improvement. And so I think that's probably the main reason why we did so well is because you were able to take my advice and implement it and ask your students yourself, be like, hey guys, what can I do better to make it feel more welcoming? And them give you advice. And so double advice, that can only mean one good thing. 20 points extra on the survey. So we did it. We did it.
Yeah, cue the confetti, right? And that's the thing, I'm so glad you mentioned transparency because while that's not something that's specifically measured, it certainly is something that helps with all of the dimensions listed in the student experience project. What are some other measures that you would suggest that instructors do who maybe didn't have the opportunity to work with a student partner in a student experience project?
You can't please everyone. Everyone is different. So don't be discouraged if you feel like you're doing a good job, but the students are still not responding well. Tell your students, I am open. You can email me anytime you feel comfortable, or maybe have an anonymous box where you can put criticism from your students so they don't feel like they might make you upset by telling you what they're going to tell you. I think having that connection really is bigger than people think it is because a lot of times, like even myself, I'll feel uncomfortable saying something to my teacher because I feel they might take it the wrong way. It's not like 99% of students don't want you to take it the wrong way. They just want to help give you advice that they feel that might actually help improve your course. I really respect that. Like I said, your transparency, I think more teachers could use that in their classroom.
You had so many great suggestions, and I didn't have time to implement them all. I'm looking forward to implementing some suggestions that you had for the future and some things that were already best practices that maybe I didn't have time to do. So, can you please elaborate on some of the things that we are going to do in the future for this course?
Well, one of my suggestions was extra credit, but we wanted to do something a little different than just extra credit. So it went from extra credit to having, again, we were focusing on belonging. So we thought maybe we could do Zoom study sessions because I know that was something I really enjoyed in my class. In some of my classes, being able to study with my peers. And you can't really do that in an online course. So maybe having like study sessions on Zoom where everyone can just, it's nothing serious, just we'll have a study captain that can volunteer and they can get like volunteer hours instead of extra credit because we don't want grade inflation. So that would definitely motivate me as a student to want to be a study captain if I got volunteer hours for it because that looks great on a resume that you volunteer to lead a group of students in a study session. And I think that also help the belonging even more. self-efficacy because then you could see how your peers are doing instead of kind of just wondering, like, I wonder if I'm the only one struggling with this right now. So that would be, I think, really fun. I would enjoy it. Another thing we decided to do, or in the future decided to do, was the announcement Easter eggs. That I thought was super cute because I know a lot of students don't read the announcements. I could be guilty of that. But having little Easter eggs that could give some kind of reward to the students for reading the announcements every day would really motivate them. Honestly, it's all about student motivation.
So having optional things that you can do because it's asynchronous, so we don't have actually planned, we everything that we do that is synchronous is optional, right? So my Zoom sessions, which I hold every week, are optional. These kinds of study groups would be optional, right? What other optional things do you think that instructors who are teaching in an asynchronous online environment might want to focus on if they want to improve their courses?
Well, we talked about Kahoot. I remember Kahoot very fondly. I'm not sure about other students, but Kahoot was my favorite. Like in high school, it was my favorite thing to do in the class time was play a Kahoot with all my friends and compete. Who knows the class material better? So just like fun little online activities, there's so many more than Kahoot. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but they're out there and really easy to use. So I think that would also be really fun. And yeah, there's so many opportunities out there online. You just have to find them. And I think that's why SCP is so special is because, like I said, teachers don't have time to find those things that maybe you can't implement or haven't thought about.
And you did research. You went into the SCP literature and the educational psychology literature to find ideas that would help us to both build student connections better and make people feel more welcome in the course. Can you speak a little bit about what you found whenever you did that kind of research going into the archives?
A lot of the archives were good advice, but not so much for online spaces. So there's not a lot of guidelines on how to foster a connection with a student that you can't see in person. And it definitely helped me, but I found that I had to kind of think outside of the box a lot more than if I were working with a teacher that was in person. I had to think a lot outside the box too.
And one of the things that you suggested from that was wording in announcements. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Announcements are important, and it's important that students read them, but also it's important that they're not like a giant paragraph of what you're supposed to do this week. Like outlining is really important. Making sure you're not word vomiting, for lack of a better word, onto an email and sending it out, and having dates, outlining, bullet points, all that stuff is really important in a good announcement. And like the cute little Easter eggs we thought of, you could add a little Easter egg like on the next discussion post, put a fact about you. I think that's really important in a teacher. That you feel like your teacher is not just a teacher, it's a human being behind the teaching job.
We've seen the rise of Conmigo and ChatGPT and these helpful services that are artificial intelligence that can help elevate student work when used the right way. What is the right way, in your opinion?
My generation is gonna be using AI in their everyday jobs. The right way is encouraging it because no matter how much you try to avoid it, will outlive everyone. So it's definitely important to take into consideration when you're building your course assignments, especially. I had a teacher that was encouraged us to use AI on our assignments. He was like, one thing that AI has that or doesn't have that we have is context. And the chatbot won't have the context of the classroom experience. And that's what makes the human experience that you can't replicate. You're golden if you know when the AI is wrong because now you can use it to speed up the process of learning something and also check your learning because if it says something wrong, you'll know. So I think it's just a really helpful tool that teachers should be more open to using because no matter if you like it or not, it's gonna happen and it's already happening. So just being open minded, I think, is really important.
We use it for feedback. That's one of the main use cases right now. It's pretty easy to implement for instructors to say, okay, take what you've written and ask for feedback and ignore what doesn't work and use what does work. One of the main advantages of the student experience project and students as partners specifically was how you were able to serve as an ombudsman or as a point of contact for students to come and ask questions or share feelings or concerns. Can you speak a bit to that experience and what that looked like?
Being a student in an online class, it could go both ways. You could feel more anonymous in asking questions and more comfortable, or you could feel isolated and less comfortable because you don't really know the people who you're talking to because you can't see them face to face. So that's where I come in, and I'm encouraging the students to come to me and say whatever hard feelings they might have towards you or any online teacher that they have, and be open and give that information to me so I can give it to you in maybe a less critical way or more critical way or whatever that needed to be said to you and anonymously. So it's coming from me, that being my job, and not from a student maybe feeling hard feelings towards the class they're taking because they're frustrated, or it's hard. It's an accelerated course. People complain about the workload, about too many videos to watch. So having someone to come to that's not the teacher that's giving you the workload and giving you the videos is hopefully more comforting.
And you're different in that an anonymous feedback survey that's written isn't the same as a human being who's able to have a conversation with you. And you're able to interpret that feedback based on your own student experiences, right?
I've taken online courses before that I didn't like, and I definitely wish I had someone that I could tell that wasn't the teacher, because sometimes you can tell if a teacher isn't willing to hear what you have to say. And that's discouraging because then you just become salty and you're like, I can't do anything. I can't change anything. I'm just going to get through this course and move on to the next one. And I think that's so horrible because if your students feel like they can't come to you about how they're feeling about your course while actively taking it, and they're feeling like they can't give you this criticism, then your course is, for lack of a better word, it's gonna suck. Your students are not gonna feel welcome. They're not gonna feel happy. And as a teacher, I feel like you should want those things for your students. So having me, I think, helps.
Absolutely. I think having a student ombudsman and a student perspective, able to talk to students about what they need and want and how they feel and what their concerns are, absolutely helps. Isabella, what's your advice for students considering the student experience program?
I think it's a great program to be a part of. I'm really excited to do this next semester as well. It's really nice to have the school ask you for your opinion on how to make the school better. Because, like I said, a lot of the time college can feel isolating. And since it's so huge, you feel like, why does my opinion matter? Like, there's so many opinions out there. Why does it matter what I say? So, giving a student the chance to give their opinion on a class in person or online boosts confidence in the student. It helps the teacher get a different perspective, and it just makes the classroom hopefully a better place to be in.
I agree. Course climate, it really improves course climate to have different modes of communication, channels of communication open for student feedback, especially in student conversation. What advice would you give to faculty who are considering working with a student experience partner in the future?
Change is hard. Just because something works for you doesn't mean it works for everyone. And so, if you as a faculty choose to come into this program, I would say be open minded to what your student has to tell you. Like, nothing I say permanent. It's just suggestions, opinions on how I think you could be better. And like me and Mr. McPherson's relationship, I give him things that I think might help him, and he tells me that's not going to work. Straight up. He's straight up with me. And I think that's really important because I'm here to help you improve your class. And so knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you is really important.
If you don't have an outside voice challenging, it's very difficult to progress on your own and implement changes on your own without that kind of outside accountability and that outside relationship. So, to highly recommend faculty take advantage of this academic innovation program because it can lead to amazing outcomes. And it doesn't necessarily mean huge overhauls to your course because small changes can make a big difference. As we saw with our 20-point increase in student belonging, which was our goal from the start of the semesters.
It was awesome. I'm so proud of us. This program is not just for fun. It's doing something to the classroom experience.
Isabella, thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to get a hold of you, how would you suggest they contact you?
By email, I have a student email at UTSA. It's my first name, Isabella, and then dot my last name, which I'll spell out. It's Bartolomeo, and then at myutsa.edu. And I love talking to people.
Excellent. Isabella, thank you again for sharing your wisdom and insights here on this format. And I look forward to hopefully academic innovation will continue this program and hopefully we'll get to work with you in the future too.
Me too. I'm excited for what's to come with this program.